All right, hi, it's David again. So let's go through just a few basic things that you need to know to run the service. So real quickly, assuming everything's already programmed, and we'll do a video or two on how to change the program and how to update it and get it to do what you want it to do. But let me give you just a real quick tour so you're comfortable with the system. The board itself is different if you worked it before with Vista. This is the new MA board, the MA3 actually, and very similar kinds of controls. We've got 4 sets of controls that are available to us, and most of the things that we do on a Sunday morning are actually going to be done with these 4 sets of controls, and then if you like to do things manually, you can use the Go button as well. But for running a show, the key things that are going to happen is making sure that we have a time code for the board, and the time code is actually coming out on the far right fader from the soundboard. If it's in normal mode, which it is at the moment, what you're going to want to see is the orange light is on. That tells us that that channel is on, and then the fader itself is up at 0. And if both of those things are happening, theoretically I should be getting time code. So the system is going to trigger off of the cues that are coming from the Ableton computer that's up by the drums. And that's what all of the songs are cued by. What are you expected to do on a Sunday morning? Well, pretty straightforward. There's 3 basic things. Number 1 is there are some manual parts of the service. So there are parts, the pre-service where we're going to walk in, and when the host gets up and sings or says a prayer, when the message comes along, those manual parts of the service that aren't really part of a song per se, you're in charge of taking care of manually. And all of those are cued off of the bottom set of buttons on the board. And I'll put a picture up and show you what those look like. But from left to right, there are pre-service, countdown, turn and greet, host, message, prayer, blackout, and then essentially a message, prayer, and walkout. Those are the keys, and all you have to do to get to any of those portions of the service is literally press that button, and it's the very bottom row of keys. You can see on the very bottom, I'm going to press the very bottom left key. It goes to the pre-service cue. All the lights in the house come up, as well as the up lights. So that's what we have when we walk in. You can tell that that's what's going on if I'm on the Showtime screen, which is here on the right side, number 7, Showtime, in the service flow, which is that's the cue list that we loaded here. The pre-service is active because it's blue, because I touched the button. So these are actually macros down here, and anytime I touch one of these buttons, it not only activates the cue that we're looking for, in this particular case the manual cue, it also disables everything else that's going on, with the exception of timecode. Anytime timecode gets fired from the Ableton computer, it will take over for you, as long as timecode is enabled, and I'll show you that in a minute. So as long as timecode's not going on, or I have it turned off on the board, which I can do manually by simply pushing that button and turning the light off, or disabling it here, you have full control of the board if the timecode's not going on. If I want to go into countdown, I simply press the countdown button. All the house lights go down, the down lights go repoint at the stage and are prepared for the band to come on. When it's time for turn and greet, we get through the first song, I simply push the turn and greet button, and we get into the basic wash that's there for turn and greet. So that's the manual set of buttons. You can go to them at any time. If you ever find yourself at a time when I'm wanting to go there and it just keeps going back or won't let me, reach over and turn timecode off, and then you're in control and you can make the board go to anything you want. So that's the manual part of the service, and that's the first set of controls along the bottom that you have access to. Second set of controls you have access to are the faders. There are manual ways that can get you out of trouble if for some reason timecode stops working, or something goes wrong and you need to just bring lights up very quickly. You have the ability to do that with these faders. If you look on the screen here, on the bottom left, all the green ones are those manual cues that we just looked at. So if I go to pre-service, you'll notice that one turns a bright green to tell me I'm in pre-service. The next row up from that, and on the screen it says house lights, front wash, pre-up, there's 2 blanks, worship wash, and then haze and fan on the right. Those in fact are the faders. And a really cool thing about this system, if you just touch the fader, it lights up and shows you which thing it is you're about to control. So if I touch that fader on the far left, right there it lights up and says, oh, that's the house lights one that you're about to touch, and I can raise or lower the house lights. So really simple way to take control. All the faders are additive. They don't remove lights, they just add lights to whatever's already going on. So I happen to already be in pre-service. If I then bring up the house lights, it really doesn't do anything because the pre-service has house lights in it already. So all of these are additive to whatever's going on. The next one across, the second one is the front wash, which it's really interesting. It doesn't change the position of the lights, it just brings those front lights up at whatever they're pointing at. So I'm in pre-service, so they're pointed up at the ceiling in a weird way. Let's go to the countdown, where they're pointed at the stage, but they're off. If now I bring up the front wash, they actually are going to flood the stage with a light. So again, they're additive based on wherever the lights are pointed. The far right 2 are the haze machine and the fan that's associated with the haze machine. And in fact, there's a new haze machine this week. We'll go ahead and bring that up. It's a significantly better machine than we had before. It provides a really nice, consistent, very fine mist haze, and we can fill the stage up very, very quickly. So you have a lot of control with that system. So the right 2 are the haze, and that's the other thing you're expected to do on a Sunday morning is keep that at a good level. And it depends on who you talk to, how much is necessary. The purpose of the haze isn't so much to see the haze necessarily, but to provide something for the lights to shine upon. If I have good haze, then I will be able to see the beams of light, and it really makes the light from our stage lighting come to life. So you want enough that I can really see every single beam of light. You don't necessarily want to fill the whole room with haze and make it smoky all the way to the back of the room. So there's a middle in between. But you're really expected to stay on top of that and make sure we get a good amount. You have a lot of control with this new machine. There is actually a lot of capability to put a lot of haze out very quickly, and it does a really great job. So I come in and practice and try to figure out what that is. You want to hit it really hard at first and then bring it down to 20-30% during the worship service to just keep a good amount on stage, but don't overdo it. So again, manual control of things on the left and haze on the right. Those are the key things that you want to be aware of. So that's controls. Number 1 are the manual portions. Number 2 are safety, faders, and manual capability plus haze. You're expected to stay on top of the haze. 3 and 4 are the top 2 rows of buttons. So they should be colored the same, and they have slightly different functionality, these top 2 rows of buttons. So if I'm looking on the far left, the very bottom button is the pre-service button that gets me into the pre-service. There's a fader above it. The button right above the fader actually corresponds to the 3rd row up. In this particular case, it says service flow. So service flow, which is part of the looping or the manual system here, all this button here really does is get me into the service flow group up here on screen. So I can flip back and forth between service flow, and then the songs are in order. This particular Sunday we're going to do Fireworks, Prodigals, House of the Lord, Lean Back, and Peace Be Still. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 different buttons. The first one is green, and that's the service flow button that shows me the service flow, and then I can choose the one I want or see what's going on within the service flow. To display the cues for the second song, I simply hit the second one over, and it takes me directly into Firework, which is the second song. If I hit the 3rd button over, it takes me directly into the what would be the second song, which is Prodigals. The 4th one over, House of the Lord. Next one over is Lean Back. Next one over is Peace Be Still. Now they're going to be different every Sunday depending on what was programmed in. Those basically just change what I'm watching in the Showtime menu so I can get to the right song on screen. The one on the top gets me to that place, but actually fires off the first cue for that song and disables everything else that's going on. So let's say I was in pre-service mode, so I'll go ahead and press pre-service. So the lights on the top are shining, the house lights are on, I've got some haze on, but nothing's going on at the moment. But I'm in a particular manual configuration. If I press the firework button, the second one down, on this, it just changes to where I am on the screen. If I press the top button for firework, it not only takes me to that place, but fires off the first cue for firework and brings up what's going on in house. So you can kind of see that for firework there's red, white, and blue house lights firing. So I'm actually on the first cue, which is the intro cue. So at the beginning of each song, the expectation of the lighting operator would be to go ahead and push that top button that corresponds to the song that's about to go on so that we fire the first cue. And the reason it's important to do that instead of just waiting for time code to happen is it not only fires the first cue, but it disables everything else that was going on. So what happens, so let's go back to pre-service. So it'll disable all the flashy lights. What happens if I don't press that button and time code just fires off the first cue? Time code isn't a macro. It literally just fires the first cue, in which case the pre-service stuff is still lit up. So in this particular case, if I go into, I'll go in and fire off the first cue on firework. Which is a blackout. And then the intro. So if I do that, and I fire off that first cue by hitting go. So interesting thing, it's probably hard to tell from because I've got this pointed down. I'm seeing the first cue, but there's two lights that weren't actually programmed in this first cue, and they're still on and shining at the ceiling because they were part of the countdown. So the only way I get past that is to use the macro and hit it for firework, and it'll fire off the first cue and disable everything that was going on before. So that's the reason we use those macros across the very top row. One little glitch. It's a fine line whether, because you're trying to time and trying to figure out when the right time is to fire off the first cue for that particular song. It's very possible that time code will fire it off before you do, or you fire it off just a little bit early and then time code hits. If for some reason time code hits first and takes you to the cue and it parks you somewhere and like the lights go out or something, it's very possible that what happened is the system went to the second cue and then you took it back to the first one. So if that's true, you might need to whack the go real quick just to get you back into the song. So that does happen periodically and something to watch for. Those are the basics of what you're going to be running during a show. So let's just kind of walk through it. So we usually start off with pre-service, so that's the bottom left button here as everybody's walking in. Darren will give a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to get to the countdown. When he says 1, you whack the countdown button, which is the second one from the left. Usually when I'm starting countdown, I'm going to start filling the stage with haze. So I'm going to manually bring up those right two haze faders and start filling the stage with haze. I want to get a good full amount of haze, especially if the first song is one of the specials. If it's not, you're going to have to use some judgment on how much you need. By the time I'm ready for the first down count of the first song, the band starts talking or singing, I should have a good amount of haze on stage, and I'm probably going to, at 0, depending on what we decide in the pre-service work, I'm going to hit the macro, in this particular case for the first song, top row button. It's the one that looks like a menu button, second from the left, which takes me to that first song. That's probably what I'm going to do right about when it gets to 0. Once that's happening, assuming time code is on, it will progress through the song. Let it go. There's really nothing to be done except ride the haze and get it to the right place. Usually we go through 2 or 3 songs, and then at the end of 2 or 3 songs, we'll go to a turn and greet. Somebody from the band will talk and welcome everybody at the appropriate time. Again, assuming time code's not firing, you might need to reach up and turn time code off if for some reason they start talking and there's still a cue, or you want to take over control. You might need to turn time code off. I'm going to go to turn and greet. It'll kill all the rest of the stuff and bring us to that turn and greet look, which is some light on the sides and washing the front. Very frequently we do a little bit of a turn and greet that goes into the host cue. You just have to be ready, and all you're going to do is press the host cue button, which would be the 4th over on the bottom left, which brings up just a wash just on the host. Usually at the end of the host, we go into the next song. So as soon as they say amen, very likely we're going to go into a song, maybe the 3rd or the 4th song. We'll pretend like it's the 4th song of the night. So it's the 5th button, because the first one is service flow on the top on the macros. So when they say amen, it's very likely you're going to fire that first cue. We'll go into that particular song. They'll do a song, they'll do 2, whatever it is. We'll go into message. Once we're ready to go into the message, again, make sure time code's not still firing at the end of that song, because it's possible there's a long tail on it. And if so, you might need to reach over and turn it off. It's up to you. It's as simple as hitting the message button, MSG in this particular case, and it gives us about 80% on the house, cuts all of the front wash, and gives just a little bit of glow on the front bars. So that's what our message looks like. Sometimes there's a video. If there's a video in the middle or beginning of the message, we usually go to full blackout. That's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th one over. It says BO. If you hit blackout, all the lights in the entire room go off. Usually we're doing that because there's a lot of light on the video and we really want to get people to focus. At the end of the video, you're very likely to go back to the message for the rest of the message. If there's a prayer after the message, there's one marked pray, and the biggest difference for us is most of the house lights just turn kind of a nice blue to give you that somber feeling. We usually go to that during the prayer, and then very frequently there's one more song. And so we would then be looking at pressing the macro top row, looking at what the song numbers are. This will be song number Peace Be Still. So it's song number 4. Song number 4 after the special. It's actually the 6th button over then. So I'll press that and it fires us into that last song. Once I get through with the song, very frequently there's somebody that stands up, and hopefully the last cue leaves some light on the stage, because frequently they're saying, hey, have a great week, don't forget the buckets, announcement about barbecue, whatever it is. If for some reason at that point there's no light on the stage, you have a couple of different options. There's one of these cues that's marked post message that brings up a nice amount of house light and puts a little bit of flood on stage, or you can just reach up to the second fader, which is the front wash, and just give them a little bit of light on stage. So you can do either one, whatever makes you comfortable. And then there's usually a walkout. We usually go to the walkout one first, which basically brings the stage down. And then as soon as the stage is down and the band just starts to put everything down, go back to the pre-service, and then that really lights up the entire room so that people have enough light to walk out. That's what a typical service looks like, and the basics of what you're expected to do during the service.